My wife got pulled over for speeding. The officer ran her license, then pulled me aside. Sir, you need to listen carefully. Do not go home. Get somewhere safe. I was stunned. Why? I asked. He paused. I can't explain now. It's horrifying. Then he handed me a note. I opened it and discovered the shocking truth. My perfect life didn't just crack, it shattered into a million pieces, revealing a horrifying truth that still chills me to the bone. That night, I discovered my wife wasn't just having an affair, she was systematically dismantling my entire existence, piece by agonizing piece, with a man I'd shown mercy 2 years ago. Chapter 1, The Shattered Illusion. I'd built everything from nothing, you know. Wade Wu, self-made man. 42 years old, 3 successful auto shops, a beautiful house in the hills, and what I truly believed was a loving marriage to Jessica. My hands were calloused, my mind sharp, honed by clawing my way out of poverty. I never forgot where I came from, or the people who'd helped me along the way. That autumn evening started like any other. I was reviewing quarterly reports when Jessica told me she was heading over to her sister Gail's place across town. Normal. They were close, and she often stayed overnight for their wine and movie nights. I kissed her goodbye, a quick peck, but I couldn't help noticing how meticulously she'd done her makeup for what was supposed to be a casual night with family. 3 hours later, I found myself in my car, heart pounding, stomach churning, following a patrol car on Highway 47. Jessica's BMW had been pulled over for speeding. Speeding. She was the most cautious driver I knew, almost annoyingly so. The officer, Seth Mayer, was young, maybe early 30s, with an earnest, fresh-faced look, like he genuinely wanted to do the right thing. As he ran Jessica's license, I watched his face. The routine boredom slowly melted into something much more serious. His eyes kept darting between his computer, Jessica, and then me, with what looked like pity. Sir, Officer Mayer called out, his steps hesitant as he approached my car. I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not go home tonight. Get somewhere safe. My blood ran cold. What? Why? What was wrong? The officer glanced around nervously, then pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm. I can't explain now. It's horrifying. Legally, I can't do anything, but, his voice dropped to a whisper, that woman isn't who you think she is, and neither is the man waiting at your house. My world tilted. What man? Read the note tonight. Don't confront anyone. Just be smart about this. Officer Mayer then returned to Jessica, handing her license back with a professional smile, but I saw the flash of disgust cross his face. As the patrol car drove away, Jessica walked back to our car, chattering nervously about the officer being weird, asking odd questions. I just nodded, the note burning like acid in my pocket. I suggested we grab dinner before heading to Gail's. I needed time. I needed to think. At the restaurant, I excused myself to the bathroom. My hands shook as I unfolded the note. Your wife has been seeing Patrick Mullins for 8 months. Tonight, he's in your house going through your safe. She gave him the combination. There's more. Much more. She's been planning this for years. I'm sorry. I wish I could do more. A friend who remembers you helped his family when no one else would. Patrick Mullins. The name hit me like a physical blow. He'd worked at my first shop 5 years ago. Charming, quick hands, but even quicker excuses for why the cash drawer was always short. I'd fired him, but I hadn't pressed charges. Everyone deserved a second chance, right? Apparently, Patrick had been planning his revenge ever since. But Jessica. My Jessica. We'd been married for 15 years. We'd built everything together, survived my mother's cancer, her father's passing, my bankruptcy. Countless struggles that should have cemented us, not torn us apart. I folded the note, my face a careful mask. Jessica was at the table, texting someone, her phone angled away from me. I'd never noticed before, but now it was glaringly obvious. Everything okay, honey? She asked, still not looking up. Perfect, I replied. And for the first time in my marriage, I meant the exact opposite. The 20-minute drive to Gail's was torture. Jessica kept checking her phone, and I found myself cataloging every lie she might have told. Every late night at work, every weekend trip to visit college friends I'd never met. The foundation of my life wasn't just cracking, it was dissolving, revealing there was never a foundation at all. When we arrived, I feigned a work emergency. I needed to head back. Her relief was so palpable, it was almost comical. She kissed me goodbye with the same lips that had probably been kissing Patrick Mullins. My fist clenched, I barely stopped myself from grabbing her throat right there. But I hadn't built an empire on impulse. My father taught me patience, my grandfather strategy, and the streets, ruthlessness. If Jessica and Patrick thought they could destroy everything I'd built, they were about to learn they just started a game with someone who never lost. As I drove, not home, but towards downtown, a cold, precise plan began to form. Chapter 2, The Hunter Awakens. I checked into the Riverside Hotel, paying cash, an old habit that success never quite erased. From my fifth-floor window, I had a clear view of my house, 3 miles away, now a beacon of betrayal. I called my lawyer, Oliver Doyle, a man who owed me more favors than either of us could count. Oliver had been a struggling public defender when my first shop was vandalized. I'd personally hunted down every gang member, and the message I delivered ensured Oliver never worried about his family's safety again. Oliver, I need surveillance equipment, professional grade, delivered to my hotel room within 2 hours. Wade, it's almost midnight. 2 hours, Oliver. And I need complete documentation on Patrick Mullins, employment history, criminal record, financial statements, known associates, everything. The silence stretched, Oliver's ethical concerns wrestling with his debt of gratitude. At 12:47 a.m., a figure emerged from the side door of my house, the one only family used. Even from this distance, I recognized Patrick's distinctive swagger, like he owned the space. He was carrying something, a bag, suspiciously like the emergency cash stash I kept in my study. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica, staying at Gail's tonight. She's having a hard time. Love you. I didn't respond. Oliver arrived at 2:15 a.m., carrying a case that looked like it belonged to a private investigator. GPS trackers, audio surveillance, micro cameras, and a complete digital file on your friend Mullins. He paused. Wade, whatever you're thinking of doing, I'm thinking of protecting what's mine. The legal system protects people like them. My voice was flat, emotionless. I protect people like me. Oliver left without another word. I spent the next hour studying Patrick Mullins's life. The man was a textbook narcissist, a long history of seducing married women, draining their accounts, and disappearing. 3 different states, always just shy of criminal charges. But he'd made a crucial error, he'd chosen my wife. I started with the surveillance equipment, mapping out entry points, camera angles. But as I studied Patrick's pattern, a more elegant plan formed. He wasn't just a thief, he was predictable. Seduce the wife, gain access, create dependency, extract everything, move on. This wasn't just about money, it was about power, humiliation, complete conquest. That meant Patrick would get careless. He'd done this before, never faced real consequences. I smiled for the first time since that note. Patrick Mullins had no idea what real consequences looked like. By dawn, I had a preliminary plan. I'd give Patrick exactly what he wanted, complete access to my world. But like a spider offering its web to a fly, that access would become a trap. My phone rang. Jessica. Hi, honey. How did your emergency go? Fine. Just a problem with the Morrison contract. The lie came easily. How's Gail? Better. Listen, I might need to stay another night or 2. She's really struggling. Of course, I said. Take care of your sister. After hanging up, I looked up Gail McIntosh's number. Time to test Jessica's elaborate deception. Gail? It's Wade. Just wanted to check on you and make sure you're okay. The confusion in Gail's voice was all the answer I needed. She was fine. Hadn't seen Jessica in 2 weeks. I thanked her and hung up, adding another lie to my mental ledger. Jessica hadn't just betrayed me, she'd crafted an entire alternate reality. The sister visits, the work emergencies, the girls' weekends, how much of her life had been fiction. I grew up on the streets. One thing the streets taught me was that people who live in fantasies die when reality comes calling. It was time to introduce Patrick and Jessica to reality. Chapter 3, The Gathering Storm. I returned home that afternoon, walking through my house like a crime scene investigator. Everything looked normal, but now I knew what to look for. The safe in my study had been opened and closed. Whoever did it was skilled, no scratches, no disturbed dust. Professional. I checked the hidden camera I'd installed years ago after a break-in scare. The timestamp showed Patrick Mullins at 11:23 p.m., photographing documents, copying files, and pocketing what looked like my emergency cash and backup credit cards. But the most chilling moment came when he held up my wedding photo, smiled at it like he was sharing a private joke, then carefully placed it face down. I watched the footage 3 times, memorizing every detail, his movements, his expressions, his casual violation of everything I held sacred. Then I made a decision that would have consequences far beyond what Jessica and Patrick could imagine. I called my old friend, Clarence Combs. Clarence ran a security consulting firm, which was a polite way of saying he handled problems that couldn't be solved through legal channels. We grew up in the same neighborhood. When Clarence's daughter needed surgery insurance wouldn't cover, I paid for it without being asked. That kind of debt runs deeper than money. Clarence, I need a full team. Surveillance, counter-surveillance, asset protection. And I need people who understand that some problems require permanent solutions. How permanent are we talking, Wade? I'll let you know. Within hours, my house was wired with professional surveillance that made Oliver's setup look like children's toys. But more importantly, Clarence provided something even more valuable, information. Your boy Patrick has debts, Clarence reported over dinner at a truck stop outside town. Serious debts. To some Russian import-export specialists who don't accept payment plans. Word is he needs a big score soon or he's gonna have more problems than a cheating wife can solve. How much does he owe? $250,000, plus interest that compounds daily. I leaned back, pieces clicking into place. So Jessica wasn't just his target. She was his lifeline. Gets better. I ran some checks on your wife's financial activity. She's been moving money for months. Small amounts, different accounts, always just under the reporting thresholds. Someone taught her how to wash money without triggering flags. The waitress refilled my coffee. I waited until she was gone. How much? Best estimate. She's moved about $400,000 over the past year. Money that came from your business accounts, your personal savings, even small amounts from your retirement fund. My vision went red around the edges. $400,000. Years of 18-hour days, deals made in back alleys and boardrooms, risks that paid off through sweat, blood, and sheer force of will. There's more, Clarence continued. The money didn't just disappear. It's been invested. Real estate purchases in Patrick's name. Some offshore accounts, a few business ventures that don't exist on paper. They've been building a future together, Wade. A future financed by your past. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. I want to know everything. Every account, every purchase, every lie they've told each other. I want to know what they eat for breakfast and what they dream about at night. I met Clarence's eyes, and I saw a flicker of understanding, a grim satisfaction, that we were on the same side. Then I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. That night, I lay in my bed, the bed I'd shared with Jessica for 15 years, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I would begin implementing a plan that would make Patrick and Jessica's betrayal look like a children's game. They thought they were stealing my life, but they were about to discover that some men couldn't be stolen from. They could only be awakened. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jessica. Miss you, home tomorrow night. Can't wait to see you. I typed back, can't wait either. We need to talk about our future. For once, I was telling the truth. Chapter 4, The web expands. I woke before dawn, going through my morning routine like a man preparing for war. Coffee, shower, a quick workout in my home gym, then a careful review of the previous night's surveillance footage. Jessica had returned at 2:47 a.m., moving through the house like a ghost, phone constantly in hand, even smelling my pillow to see if I'd been there. When she finally woke at 9:30, I was already gone, ostensibly to work, but actually to begin phase 1 of my plan. My first stop was Maria Gamble's office, a private investigator specializing in financial crimes. Maria had helped me years ago, uncovering embezzlement that saved me from a disastrous merger. She was thorough, discreet, and had no qualms about operating in legal gray areas. I need complete financial profiles on these two, I said, sliding photos of Jessica and Patrick across her desk. Every account, every transaction, every asset, legal and illegal. Maria studied the photos. Your wife. My soon-to-be ex-wife. This isn't going to be cheap, Wade. Deep financial investigations take time and resources. I placed a briefcase on her desk and opened it. $50,000 in cash. How much time do you need? 72 hours. You have 48. Next, I visited my accountant, Hal Stevens, who managed the books for all 3 of my auto shops. Hal was meticulously obsessive, which made him perfect for what I needed. Hal, I need you to restructure everything. Transfer ownership of the shops to a new corporation. Move all liquid assets to accounts Jessica can't access, and create a paper trail that shows the businesses are struggling financially. Hal's face went pale. Wade, if you're going through a divorce, this could be considered asset hiding. The courts won't be involved. My tone was flat. I'm not getting divorced, Hal. I'm getting justice. The difference in my voice made Hal stop asking questions. By afternoon, I'd visited each of my shops, ostensibly for routine inspections, but actually to plant seeds of a much larger plan. I spoke privately with key employees, asking carefully crafted questions about loyalty, about what they would do if the business faced serious threats, about whether they could keep sensitive information confidential. I'd learned long ago that loyalty couldn't be bought, but it could be cultivated. Every person I spoke with remembered specific kindnesses, Christmas bonuses when their kids needed surgery, promotions when other shops wouldn't hire them, second chances when their own mistakes could have cost them everything. By evening, I'd assembled a network of allies who would do almost anything to protect the man who had protected them. The final stop of the day was the most important, a meeting with James Hernandez, a man whose official title was business consultant, but whose actual function was solving problems that couldn't be solved through conventional means. We met at a private club downtown, the kind of place where conversations weren't recorded and memberships couldn't be bought with money alone. I have a situation, I began, that requires a delicate touch. James listened without interruption as I outlined the betrayal, the theft, the complete violation of everything I'd built. When I finished, James was quiet for a long moment. What's your endgame, Wade? Complete destruction. I want them to lose everything they've stolen from me, and everything they think they own. I want them to understand what it feels like to have their entire life revealed as a lie. And if they fight back. My smile was cold. They're welcome to try. James nodded slowly. This isn't just about money, is it? No, I said. It's about respect, about consequences, about teaching two people that there are men in this world who can't be stolen from. Only awakened. I can have resources in place within a week. You have 3 days. I drove home to find Jessica cooking dinner, humming softly to herself, playing the role of devoted wife with an expertise that would have been admirable if it weren't so completely false. She kissed me when I walked in, and I had to suppress the urge to grab her throat and demand the truth. Instead, I played my own role, the trusting husband, the successful businessman, the man too comfortable in his life to notice it being systematically dismantled around him. How was work? Jessica asked, her voice bright with false concern. Interesting, I replied. I've been thinking about expanding, maybe opening a 4th shop. Jessica's fork paused halfway to her mouth. That sounds expensive. I've been looking at a place across town. Perfect location, but it would require a significant investment. I watched her face carefully. Money to liquidate some assets to make it work. The flash of panic in Jessica's eyes was so brief that someone who didn't know what to look for might have missed it. But I saw it, cataloged it, and filed it away for future use. Maybe we should discuss any major financial decisions together, Jessica said carefully. Of course, I said. After all, we're partners in everything. That night, as Jessica slept beside me, I lay awake, planning the systematic destruction of 2 people who had made the mistake of thinking Wade Wu was just another mark to be conned and discarded. They were about to learn that some men weren't victims. They were predators. Chapter 5, The Trap Springs Shut. The call came at 6:47 a.m., 3 days after I'd set my plan in motion. Maria Gamble's voice was tight with excitement and disgust in equal measure. Wade, you need to see this. Can you be in my office in an hour? I arrived to find Maria's desk covered with financial documents, photographs, and bank records that painted a picture of systematic betrayal far deeper than I'd imagined. Your wife is smart, Maria began. But Patrick Mullins is smarter. And greedier. She spread out a series of bank statements. Jessica has been moving your money for 14 months, not 8. But here's the interesting part, Patrick's been moving her money, too. Every account she set up, every investment she made with your stolen funds, he's been skimming from. She thinks they have 400,000 together. He's actually got closer to 600, and 300 of it is hidden from her. I studied the documents, a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. He's planning to disappear. More than that, look at this. Maria produced a lease agreement. Patrick signed a 2-year lease on a house in Costa Rica in Jessica's name, using her social security number and forged signature. If things go south, she's liable for 24 months of rent on a place she's never seen. Where? Costa Rica. Non-extradition jurisdiction for financial crimes under 50,000 per incident. I leaned back in my chair, pieces of the puzzle clicking together. Patrick wasn't just stealing from me, he was setting Jessica up to take the fall for everything. When it was time to disappear, he'd leave her holding the bag for fraud charges, while he lived comfortably on money stolen from both of us. There's more, Maria continued. Patrick's been recording everything. Phone calls, hotel meetings, even intimate encounters. He's got enough evidence to destroy Jessica's reputation and implicate her in every aspect of the theft, while painting himself as a manipulated victim. I felt something that might have been admiration for Patrick's thoroughness, if it weren't directed at destroying my life. The man was a professional predator who had perfected the art of leaving his accomplices to face consequences alone. But Patrick had made one crucial error. He'd assumed Wade Wu was just another mark. I need copies of everything, I said. And I need you to do one more thing. That afternoon, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I called Jessica at work and asked her to meet me for lunch at our favorite restaurant, the same place we'd had our first date 16 years ago. Jessica arrived looking beautiful and nervous, checking her phone constantly, a habit I now recognized as Patrick maintenance. I've been thinking about our future, I began, echoing the text I'd sent 2 nights ago. About what we want out of life. What do you mean? I pulled out a folder and set it on the table between us. I mean, I think it's time for us to make some changes. Big changes. Jessica's face went pale as she opened the folder and saw the first document, a property listing for a house in Costa Rica, complete with photographs and a purchase agreement. Wade, what is this? Our new life. I've been looking into retiring early. Maybe moving somewhere we can really be ourselves. I watched Jessica's face carefully. I found this place through a business associate. Patrick Mullins. You remember Patrick, don't you? He used to work for me. Jessica's hand trembled as she turned the pages. I don't understand. Patrick's been helping me research expatriate living, taxes, property laws, the best ways to transfer assets internationally without triggering government oversight. My voice was casual, conversational. He's got quite a bit of experience with international finance. The color drained from Jessica's face. She realized I was describing exactly what she and Patrick had been doing with my money. But there was more. I was describing it like it was my idea, like I was planning to do it legally and openly. Wade, I don't think, Patrick suggested we could liquidate most of our domestic assets and reinvest them offshore. He estimates we could have everything transferred within a month if we move quickly. Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I saw her face go from pale to gray. Whatever Patrick had just sent her, it wasn't good news. I need to go, Jessica said suddenly, closing the folder. I'm not feeling well. Of course. Take the folder with you. Look it over, and we can discuss it tonight. I watched Jessica hurry out, clutching the folder like it was evidence of her own execution. In a way, it was. Because Jessica now had to choose, warn Patrick that I somehow knew about their plan, risking exposure of their entire relationship. Or stay quiet and hope my interest in Costa Rica was coincidental. Either choice would lead to the same result. Patrick would realize the situation had become too dangerous and would begin implementing his exit strategy, which meant he would begin cutting Jessica loose. My phone buzzed. A text from Clarence, package delivered. Phase 3 was ready to begin. That evening, I came home to find Jessica pacing the kitchen, the Costa Rica folder open on the counter, her phone pressed to her ear. She hung up quickly when she saw me. Everything okay? I asked. Fine. Just work stuff. Jessica's smile was strained. I looked over those documents. It's an interesting idea, but maybe we should think about it more. Actually, I was hoping we could speed things up. Patrick thinks there might be some regulatory changes coming that could make transfers more difficult. Jessica's face went through a series of micro-expressions: fear, confusion, calculation, desperation. I catalogued each one. Maybe we should meet with Patrick together, she said finally, so he can explain the details to both of us. I smiled. Great idea. How about tomorrow night? After Jessica went to bed, I called Clarence. Tomorrow night, Patrick Mullins is going to realize he's been outplayed. I need you to make sure he doesn't have any options for running. Consider it done. I hung up and walked to my study, where I opened my safe and removed the item Clarence had delivered that afternoon, a digital recorder containing every conversation Patrick and Jessica had shared over the past month, courtesy of surveillance equipment that made their hotel room a confessional booth. I'd heard my wife's voice describing how easy it would be to bleed me dry, how Patrick made her feel alive in a way I never could, how they would disappear once they had enough of my money. But the most interesting conversation had been the one where Patrick explained to Jessica how he would eventually need to cut ties cleanly when the time came to relocate permanently. Jessica had no idea she was talking to a man who was planning to destroy her life along with mine. I smiled as I locked the recorder back in the safe. Tomorrow night, Jessica and Patrick would discover that they weren't the only ones capable of planning a betrayal. They were just the only ones stupid enough to think they could get away with it. Chapter 6, The Crucible. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. at Morton Steakhouse, neutral territory where both Jessica and Patrick would feel comfortable. I arrived early and selected a corner booth with clear sight lines to all entrances, Old habits from a youth spent in environments where sitting with your back to a door could be fatal. Jessica arrived first, her nervousness obvious in the way she kept smoothing her hair and checking her phone. She dressed carefully, professional but attractive, the kind of outfit that suggested serious business while still appealing to the men in her life. Patrick entered exactly at 7. I had to admire his composure. The man showed no sign of recognition beyond a polite smile, no indication that he'd been systematically looting my life for over a year. He was good at his craft. "Wade, good to see you again," Patrick said, extending his hand with perfect confidence. "Jessica's told me you're interested in some offshore opportunities." "Very interested," I replied, studying Patrick's face. "Understand you have considerable experience with international asset management." "Some," Patrick said modestly. "I've helped a few clients diversify their holdings in favorable jurisdictions." I nodded and pulled out a briefcase. "I've brought some documentation you might find interesting." Patrick's eyes flicked to the briefcase, then to Jessica, who had gone very still. I opened the briefcase and removed 3 folders, setting them on the table with deliberate precision. "The first folder contains financial records from my businesses over the past 18 months, I began. "Revenue, expenses, asset transfers, the usual." Patrick relaxed slightly. This was familiar territory. "The second folder contains surveillance photographs taken over the past month." Patrick's face didn't change, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Jessica made a small sound that might have been a whimper. "The third folder contains transcripts of conversations between various parties regarding my finances, my marriage, and certain planned relocations to non-extradition territories." The silence that followed was profound. Patrick's hand stopped moving toward his water glass. Jessica was staring at the folders like they were venomous snakes. "Now," I continued conversationally, "we can discuss this like civilized people, or we can involve other parties. Your choice." Patrick recovered first, as I'd expected. Predators are always quick to assess new threats. "Wade, I think there might be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." I opened the first folder and removed a bank statement. "Jessica, would you like to explain to Patrick why your signature appears on this withdrawal authorization for $50,000 from my business account?" Jessica's face crumpled. "Wade, please, or Patrick, perhaps you'd like to explain why you're listed as the beneficiary on a life insurance policy Jessica took out on me 6 months ago." That got Patrick's attention. I had saved this revelation for maximum impact, and a look of genuine surprise on Patrick's face told me everything I needed to know. Patrick hadn't known about the insurance policy, which meant Jessica had been planning contingencies that didn't include her lover. Patrick's voice was carefully controlled, but I caught the edge of betrayal underneath. $2 million, I said, with Jessica as the primary beneficiary, and Patrick Mullins as secondary. Interesting arrangement, don't you think? Patrick turned to Jessica with an expression that would have been terrifying if I hadn't been enjoying it so much. "You didn't mention any insurance policies." "I wanted to protect us." "Protect us, or protect yourself?" I leaned back and watched as the alliance between my wife and her lover began to fracture in real time. This was why I'd included the insurance information, even though discovering it had been the most chilling moment of my investigation. Jessica hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been considering whether my death might be more profitable than my betrayal. "There's more," I said, opening the second folder. "Patrick, are you familiar with the name Arturo Haynes?" Patrick's face went white. "How do you?" "Arturo is a business associate of mine, has been for years." Imagine my surprise when he mentioned that someone had approached him about arranging an accident for a prominent local businessman. This was a lie, but I delivered it with such casual confidence that both Jessica and Patrick believed it completely. The art of psychological warfare was making your enemies destroy themselves with their own guilt and paranoia. "Wade," Jessica whispered. "We never what?" I asked. "Never planned to kill me, or never planned to get caught." Patrick stood abruptly. "I think this conversation is over." "Sit down," I said quietly, and something in my voice made Patrick freeze. "You haven't heard the best part yet." I opened the third folder and removed a photograph of Patrick entering a hotel room, followed by another photograph of him leaving 3 hours later with a briefcase. "That's the Riverside Hotel, room 237. Last Tuesday night." The briefcase contains approximately $15,000 in cash that Jessica doesn't know about. Jessica turned to Patrick with an expression of dawning horror. "What is he talking about?" "Or we could discuss the house in Costa Rica that Patrick leased in your name, Jessica. The one you'll be liable for even after he disappears with the money you've both been stealing from me." The trap was now fully sprung. Patrick realized he'd been outmaneuvered. Jessica realized she'd been betrayed by both men in her life. I sat back to watch them tear each other apart. "You bastard." Jessica hissed at Patrick. You were planning to leave me holding everything. And you were planning to murder your husband. Patrick shot back. Don't pretend you're innocent in this. I smiled. Actually, you're both going to have bigger problems than each other very soon. I removed my phone and showed them the screen, which displayed a text message, package secured, awaiting instructions. Clarence Combs has been monitoring this conversation. He's also been monitoring both of your residences, your financial accounts, and your communications. In approximately 10 minutes, federal agents are going to raid Patrick's apartment and Jessica's office. This was another lie, but I was counting on panic to prevent logical thinking. What they'll find is evidence of systematic fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. They'll also find evidence that Jessica has been embezzling from her own company to fund this operation. Jessica's face went ashen. She worked as an accountant for a major firm, and any financial irregularities in her work would end her career, even if they didn't result in criminal charges. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Patrick, you're going to transfer every penny you've stolen from me back to my accounts. All of it, including the money you've hidden from Jessica. And if I refuse? My smile was cold. Then you'll find out what happens when you steal from someone who grew up in neighborhoods where thieves didn't live long enough to repeat their mistakes. Patrick's bravado cracked. You're threatening me. I'm promising you. I turned to Jessica. And you, my dear wife, are going to sign divorce papers that leave you with exactly what you brought to this marriage 15 years ago. Nothing. Wade, please. You had 15 years to be honest with me. You had 1,000 opportunities to be the woman I thought I married. Instead, you chose to be a thief and a whore. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I stood and placed $500 on the table. This covers dinner. You have 24 hours to comply with my terms. After that, other people will handle the situation, and they won't be as generous as I'm being. I walked away, leaving Jessica and Patrick to face the wreckage of their carefully planned betrayal. Behind me, I could hear them starting to argue, accusations flying. The sound of two predators turning on each other when their prey proved too dangerous to handle. The real revenge was just beginning. Chapter 7, The Reckoning. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to my first auto shop, the one I'd built with borrowed money and 18-hour days when I was 25, hungry enough to fight for every dollar. I sat in my office until dawn, watching surveillance footage of Patrick and Jessica's increasingly desperate phone calls and text messages. By 3 a.m., Patrick had attempted to access 3 different bank accounts, only to discover that Clarence's people had frozen all his assets pending a federal investigation, a fiction that would hold long enough for my purposes. Jessica had called in sick to work and spent 2 hours frantically searching her apartment for documents that would prove her innocence of crimes she was actually guilty of. Patrick's call finally came. Wade, I'm listening. This has gone too far. Let's work something out. I smiled. Desperation always sounded the same, regardless of who was wearing it. I gave you my terms yesterday. Have you complied? I can't. I can't transfer money from frozen accounts. Then you'd better figure out how to unfreeze them permanently. I want you to understand that stealing from Wade Wu was the worst mistake of your life. And I want you to spend whatever time you have left remembering that lesson. My voice went cold. And Jessica is my wife. What happens to her is between her and me. I hung up and immediately called Clarence. How long until Patrick cracks completely? He's already cracking. My boys picked up some interesting chatter this morning. Seems Patrick's been in contact with those Russian friends of his, trying to negotiate more time to pay his debts. And Russians aren't known for their patience. Word is they're sending someone to discuss the matter with Patrick personally. I felt a dark satisfaction settle in my chest. Patrick's past was catching up with him at exactly the moment when his future was disappearing. Perfect timing. Make sure the Russians know where to find him. Already handled. My second call was to Oliver Doyle. I need divorce papers drawn up. Adultery, fraud, theft of marital assets. I want everything protected under irreconcilable differences, with evidence of criminal activity. Wade. If you have evidence of criminal activity, you should involve law enforcement. Law enforcement moves too slowly. I need this handled privately. What about Jessica? She'll fight this. My laugh was humorless. Jessica is going to be too busy trying to stay out of prison to fight anything. By noon, I had received confirmation that Patrick had attempted to flee the state, only to discover that his passport had been flagged for suspicious financial activity. TSA had detained him for 3 hours before releasing him with a warning that his travel was being monitored. My third call of the day was to Jessica. We need to meet. Her voice was shaky, defeated. I'll sign whatever you want. Good. My lawyer's office. 3 p.m. Wade. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am sorry. I considered this for a moment. No, you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. The divorce proceedings took less than an hour. Jessica signed every document without reading them, her hands shaking with exhaustion and fear. When it was over, she looked at me, tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now you learn to live with the consequences of your choices. Will you? Will you press charges? I studied my ex-wife's face, seeing perhaps for the first time the person she actually was beneath the mask she'd worn for 15 years. Weak, selfish, willing to destroy anyone to get what she wanted, but ultimately, a small person who had made the mistake of trying to prey on someone stronger. No, I said finally. You're not worth the effort. The relief on Jessica's face was pathetic. She actually thought she was getting away with it. I walked out of the lawyer's office a free man, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. That evening, I sat in my study and made one final call. Clarence, it's time. You sure about this, Wade? I'm sure. 2 hours later, I received a text message with an address and a time. I drove across town to a warehouse district I'd known well in my youth, places where problems were solved permanently and questions weren't asked. Patrick Mullins was waiting for me, tied to a chair in the center of an empty building. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, and his eyes held the desperate terror of a man who had finally realized the game was over. Wade. Patrick gasped as I approached. Thank God. These men, they're insane. They think I owe them money. I pulled up a chair and sat down facing Patrick. You do owe them money. $250,000 plus interest. That's impossible. I never borrowed from Russians. No, but you stole money that was going to be used to pay them back. My voice was calm, conversational. You see, Patrick, I've been doing business with Arturo Haynes for years. Why? I needed investors for my first shop. Arturo connected me with some international financiers. Russians, as it happens. Patrick's face went white. You paid them back years ago. I did, with money that technically belonged to you since you'd stolen it from me. I smiled. Which means you owe them the money I used to pay my debt, with 15 years of compound interest. The math was fictional, but Patrick was too terrified to question it. Sometimes the most effective lies were the ones that sounded just plausible enough. I don't have that kind of money. I know. That's why we're here. I stood and walked to where Clarence was waiting with 2 other men Patrick probably recognized from his nightmares. Patrick Mullins, I said formally. You made the mistake of thinking you could steal from me. You made the mistake of thinking you could seduce my wife and destroy my life. Most importantly, you made the mistake of thinking I was just another mark to be conned and discarded. I nodded to Clarence. You were wrong. The last thing Patrick saw was me walking away, leaving him to face the consequences of a life built on destroying other people's trust. Chapter 8, The Price of Betrayal. I didn't watch what happened to Patrick Mullins. I didn't need to. Some lessons were more effective when they remained private between teacher and student, and I had taught enough lessons in my youth to know that Patrick would understand the message clearly. 3 days later, Patrick's disappearance made the local news as a missing person case. His apartment had been abandoned, his car found at the airport, and there were conflicting reports about whether he'd boarded a flight to Mexico or simply vanished entirely. The police investigation was perfunctory. Patrick Mullins had no family, few friends, and a history of leaving town abruptly. People like him disappeared all the time. I felt no guilt about Patrick's fate. In my experience, men who made careers out of destroying other people's lives rarely lived long enough to enjoy retirement. I had simply accelerated the inevitable. But Jessica was a different matter entirely. I found her on a Thursday evening, sitting alone in the same restaurant where we'd had our confrontation with Patrick. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of consequences she'd never imagined she'd have to carry. I heard about Patrick, she said without looking up when I sat down across from her. Did you? The police came by my apartment yesterday. They're asking questions about his financial dealings, his associates. She finally met my eyes. They asked about you. What did you tell them? The truth. That Patrick used to work for you. That we'd met with him recently about some business opportunity. That I hadn't seen him since. I nodded. Smart. Jessica laughed bitterly. Too little, too late for smart. We sat in silence for several minutes. 2 people who'd shared 15 years of marriage looking at each other like strangers, which, I reflected, they probably always had been. I never meant for it to go This far, Jessica said finally. Yes, you did. You just didn't think you'd get caught. No, I mean, I never meant to hurt you. Not really. I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. What I saw instead was the same self-serving rationalization I'd heard from every criminal I'd ever known, the belief that wanting something badly enough justified taking it. You took out a life insurance policy on me, Jessica. $2 million. She flinched. It wasn't what you think. Then what was it? Insurance in case something happened naturally. You weren't going to, she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I leaned back in my chair. But you thought about it. The silence stretched between us like a confession. What happens now? Jessica asked. Now you disappear. You take whatever money you manage to hide from both Patrick and me, and you start over somewhere I'll never see you again. And if I don't? My smile was cold. Then you'll discover that Patrick wasn't the only one who owed dangerous people money. Jessica's face went ashen. Wade, please, you have 1 week. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. If you ever contact me, if you ever try to come back, if I even hear your name mentioned in this town again, what happened to Patrick will look like mercy compared to what happens to you. I walked away without looking back, leaving Jessica to contemplate the ruins of a life she destroyed through her own greed and betrayal. Outside, I sat in my car for several minutes, feeling something that might have been sadness if I were the type of man who indulged in such emotions. 15 years of marriage, gone. Not just ended, but revealed to have been a lie from the beginning. But I had survived worse losses. I'd survived poverty, violence, betrayal by people I trusted more than Jessica. I'd built an empire from nothing once before, and I could do it again if necessary. My phone buzzed. A text from Clarence, package handled, no loose ends. I deleted the message and started my car. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of rebuilding my life without the weight of people who had never deserved my trust. It would be different this time. Better. Because I had learned something valuable from Jessica and Patrick's betrayal. The only person I could truly trust was myself. And sometimes, that was enough. Chapter 9, The New Foundation. 6 months later, I stood in the office of my fourth auto shop, watching the morning crew prepare for another day. The business had expanded faster than I'd projected, fueled by the insurance money from Patrick's theft and the liquidated assets from my divorce settlement. The insurance company had paid out quickly once I provided evidence of Patrick's systematic embezzlement. They'd been satisfied with the police report of Patrick's disappearance and showed no interest in investigating further. People like Patrick disappeared all the time, and insurance companies preferred simple explanations. My legal troubles had been minimal. Oliver Doyle had structured everything perfectly, the divorce, the business transfers, even the insurance claims. Jessica's signature on various documents had made her the legal owner of several debts she'd never known about, while I emerged clean and profitable. The new shop was in the part of town where I'd grown up, a neighborhood that had gotten worse since I'd left it behind. But I remembered what it felt like to be young and hungry, looking for someone to give you a chance. I hired locally, paid well, and asked no questions about my employees' backgrounds as long as they showed up and worked hard. Clarence Combs stopped by every few weeks, ostensibly to discuss security for the shops, but actually to provide updates on situations that required monitoring. Jessica relocated to Phoenix, Clarence reported during one of these visits. Working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. Low profile, no contact with anyone from her past. Good. You wanted to keep tabs on her. I considered this. Jessica was broken, exiled, living in fear of consequences that might never come. It was a fitting punishment for someone who had tried to destroy my life, but it was also complete. She posed no further threat. No, let her go. Clarence nodded. What about the other matter? What other matter? Officer Seth Mayer. The one who warned you about Jessica and Patrick. I had been wondering when this conversation would come. Officer Mayer had risked his career to warn me about the conspiracy, and I didn't forget debts like that. What about him? His daughter needs surgery. Leukemia. Insurance won't cover the experimental treatment that might save her life. I was quiet for a moment, remembering another young police officer who had faced similar circumstances years ago. How much? 200,000. Handle it. Anonymous donation through one of the medical charities. Consider it done. After Clarence left, I walked through my shops, speaking with employees, checking on projects, maintaining the personal connections that made my business more than just another repair service. I'd learned long ago that loyalty was built on countless small interactions, not grand gestures. My phone rang as I was reviewing inventory reports. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Wade Wu. Mr. Wu, this is Detective Angela Maddox with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm investigating the disappearance of Patrick Mullins. I was hoping you might have a few minutes to answer some questions. I felt a familiar calm settle over me. Of course, Detective. When would be convenient? Actually, I'm in the area now. Could I stop by your shop? I'll be here. Detective Maddox arrived 20 minutes later, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and the kind of patient demeanor that suggested she was very good at her job. I met her in my office, offering coffee and projecting the helpful attitude of a successful businessman with